the Wimbledon men's singles final of 1975. This was not black power. This was grace, elegance. This was brain power, the creation of a strategy that might frustrate the prevailing order of the day. Frustrate and overcome. Arthur Ashe, Wimbledon champion.
There are heroes throughout history that cannot help but be recognized, just as there are events throughout history that particularly stand out, like the 11 most famous court cases in America. But whether people or events, we cannot deny their vast contribution in one way or the other to the world. Also, Arthur Ashe once said, open quote, "True heroism is remarkably sober, very undramatic. It is not the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost, but the urge to serve others at whatever cost." Close quote.
I was involved in USTA. I think it was in the NJTL for a bit, and it was something Arthur started, so I definitely knew that he started, and I was really happy to play it. And it motivated me. Reading stories about how Arthur wasn't able to play when he was 12 motivated me because of what he went through, because of what he did. I have an opportunity to play. I have an opportunity to be the best that I can be because of him.
You're born of a free will. You can play or you cannot play.
We are teaching kids to play tennis and to excel at tennis, not for tennis' sake, but as a means to an end to earn a college scholarship. And he would love that.
And on July 10, 1943, a man who was not only the first great African-American tennis player, but used his celebrity status to further civil rights causes, most notably the movement against apartheid, was born. He was the only African-American to win Wimbledon, the US, and the Australian Open. His name, Arthur Robert Ashe Jr.
I guess I tried to be a holistic athlete in the sense of not just stopping with what happened on the field or on the court.
Born on July 10, 1943, he was an African-American professional tennis player who was one of the most prominent players of his time. He was the first black to be ranked #1 in the world and also ranked among the best players to have ever graced the game. This week's edition of People in History takes a look at the life and times of this great tennis player, who was the first black player selected to the United States Davis Cup team and the only black man ever to win the singles title at Wimbledon, the US Open and the Australian Open.
And that's it. Game, set and match to Miss Gibson.
Arthur Ashe was born in Richmond, Virginia, to Arthur Ashe Sr. and Mattie Cordell Cunningham Ashe. He had a brother, Johnny, who was 5 years younger. In March 1950, Ashe's mother, Mattie, died from complications known as preeclampsia at the age of 27. Ashe and his brother were raised by their father, who worked as a handyman and salaried caretaker special policeman for Richmond's recreation department.
He was raised by a no-nonsense father. He wanted his son to behave, to treat people respectfully.
Ashe Sr. was a caring father and strict disciplinarian who encouraged Arthur to excel in both school and in sports, but forbade him from playing American football, a popular game for many black children, due to his son's slight build, something that meant Arthur's childhood nicknames were Skinny or Bones.
The pastor of the Church of Redeemer at the time was quite a tennis enthusiast, so he decided that he was going to invite Arthur Ashe to be one of our fellowship forum speakers. He wasn't a real muscular guy. I remember him being kind of tall and lanky. I remember some of the girls, they got back in the corner and I heard them say, "Oh, you know, he's so shy."
The Ashes lived in the caretaker's cottage in the grounds of 18-acre Brookfield Park, Richmond's largest blacks-only public playground, which had basketball courts, 4 tennis courts, a pool, and 3 baseball diamonds. Ashe started playing tennis at 7 years of age and began practicing on the courts, where his natural talent was spotted by Virginia Union University student and part-time Brookfield tennis instructor Ron Charity, who, as the best black tennis player in Richmond at the time, began to teach Ashe the basic strokes and encouraged him to enter local tournaments. Ashe attended Maggie L. Walker High School, where he continued to practice tennis. Ron Charity brought him to the attention of Robert Walter Johnson, a physician, and the coach of Althea Gibson, who founded and funded the Junior Development Program of the American Tennis Association, ATA.
He was able to get the powers at the high school level to allow blacks to play in integrated events.
Dr. Johnson, I want to introduce you to our Rona TV cameras and tell us you've got some other boys here in Lynchburg too, haven't you?
Yes, I have a couple of boys here today that won the men's doubles championship yesterday.
Arthur, what's the occasion? Explain.
We're here today to honor Dr. Johnson, my second teacher, my second most important teacher. He did a lot for me. I've been with him since I was 10 years old, and that makes 12 years now, and I haven't stopped progressing yet, so he must have something inside.
Ashe was coached and mentored by Johnson at his tennis summer camp home in Lynchburg, Virginia, from 1953, when Ashe was age 10, until 1960. Johnson helped fine-tune Ashe's game and taught him the importance of racial socialization through sportsmanship, etiquette, and the composure that would later become an Ashe hallmark. He was told to return every ball that landed within 2 inches of a line and never to argue with an umpire's decision. In 1958, Ashe became the first African American to play in the Maryland Boys Championships. It was also his first integrated tennis competition. In 1960, precluded from playing Caucasian youths in segregated Richmond during the school year and unable to use the city's indoor courts, which were closed to black players, Ashe accepted an offer from Richard Hedlin, a 62-year-old St. Louis teacher, tennis coach, and friend of Dr. Johnson, to move to St. Louis and spend his senior year attending summer high school, where he could compete more freely. Ashe lived with Hedlin and his family for the year, during which time Hedlin coached and encouraged him to develop the serve and volley game that Ashe's now stronger physique allowed. Ashe was able to practice at the National Guard Armory indoor courts, and in 1961, after lobbying by Dr. Johnson, he was granted permission to compete in the previously segregated U.S. Interscholastic Tournament and won it for the school.
That's it! And he's done it. He really has done it. Oh, what a tremendous scene. And I think we can fairly say that's a final that we shall never forget.
In December 1960 and again in 1963, Ashe was featured in Sports Illustrated, appearing in their faces in the crowd segment. He became the first African American to win the National Junior Indoor Tennis title and was awarded a tennis scholarship to the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA in 1963. During his time at UCLA, he was coached by J.D. Morgan and practiced regularly with his sporting idol, Pancho Gonzalez, who lived nearby and helped hone his game. After graduating with a bachelor's degree in business administration, Ashe joined the United States Army on August 4, 1966.
When you were coming out of college in those days, the Vietnam was starting up, and they were drafting people. And he would have been drafted and then just gone in as a private first class. Well, he had a college degree and a college education, and he wanted to be an officer.
Ashe completed his basic training in Washington and was later commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Adjutant General Corps. He was assigned to the United States Military Academy at West Point, where he worked as a data processor. During his time at West Point, Ashe headed the Academy's tennis program. He was promoted to first lieutenant on February 23, 1968, and was discharged from the Army in 1969.
Arthur did come to Vietnam as well during the time I was there. And he came to Saigon, and I was in the Delta, in a place called Canto, and I flew up to make sure I saw him. He went there as a member of the Davis Cup team.
We went down there as tennis players, ambassadors. Well, we wanted to do our part, and certainly as tennis players, a lot of us were fairly well known, and we'd been to many cities that the soldiers have been to. Arthur was actually with a soldier, and he started going to convulsions in the brain unit, and they got us out of there, got him out of there, and that soldier didn't make it. It was tough duty.
In 1963, Ashe became the first black player ever selected from the United States Davis Cup team.
See what he does with this. Bang. Ashe into the net. He wrong puts Ray Ruffles. And Arthur Ashe has beaten Ray Ruffles. Great victory to America. They now lead 2 rubbers to love in the 1968 Davis Cup Challenge round from Memorial Drive in Adelaide.
Certainly in Davis Cup competition, he was very proud to be American.
In 1965, ranked number 3 player in the United States, Ashe won both the National Collegiate Athletic Association NCAA singles title and the doubles title, helping UCLA win the team NCAA tennis championship. In 1966 and 1967, Ashe reached the final of the Australian Championship but lost on both occasions to Roy Emerson. 1968 was another groundbreaking year for Ashe. He won the United States Amateur Championships against Davis Cup teammate Bob Lutz, and the first US Open of the Open era, becoming the first black male to capture the title, and the only player to have won both the Amateur and Open National Championships in the same year.
Bud Collins, along with Jack Kramer, with you at Forest Hills of an extraordinary event in tennis, the first US Open.
Arthur Ashe came into Forest Hills for the first U.S. Open. Prize money involved.
He had no pressure on him at all. I mean, he came into the tournament. No one expected Arthur Ashe to win the first Open.
He had played for a few years already. I mean, we knew who he was. We knew that he was a terrific player.
Arthur could beat anybody on a given day, or he could lose to a bad player if he was mishitting. All the elements, as they say, the stars were aligned. Everything fell in place.
In order to maintain Davis Cup eligibility and have time away from Army duty for important tournaments, Ashe was required to maintain his amateur status. Because of this, he could not accept the $14,000 first prize money, which was instead given to runner-up Tom Ucker, while Ashe received just $20 daily expenses for his historic triumph.
He kept mowing through the field, wiping people out, and finally got to the final against Tom Ucker. He fought for 5 sets. Fantastic match. Ucker looked as though he was going to win several times.
Got it!
But Arthur kept at it, moved to the net. He was volleying beautifully.
It was a tight match that he didn't expect necessarily to win, although Ucker was not a great grass court player. He was a better, really, defender, clay court player, where Arthur had a big whip backhand and a big first serve.
Suddenly, he was the U.S. Open champion.
It was the first time anyone had won the U.S. Open Championship where it was pros and amateurs. And the irony of it was the first prize was $14,000. But Arthur was receiving, a per diem from me on the Davis Cup team as an amateur, so he couldn't take the prize money and didn't take the prize money. So Tom Ucker, who was the runner-up, got the first prize.
His ability to compete in the championship and avoid the Vietnam War arose from his brother Johnny's decision to serve an additional tour in Vietnam in Arthur's place. In December 1968, Ashe helped the US team become Davis Cup champions after victory in the final in Adelaide against defending champions Australia. His only loss in the 12 Davis Cup tournament singles matches he played that year was in the last dead rubber game after the US team had already clinched victory. The season closed with Ashe the winner of 10 of 22 tournaments, with a 72-10 win-loss match record. In September 1969, the US Davis Cup team retained the cup, beating Romania in the final challenge round, with Ashe winning both his singles matches.
15-14.
The same year, Ashe applied for a visa to play in the South African Open, but was denied the visa by the South African government, who enforced a strict apartheid policy of racial segregation. He continued to apply for visas in the following years, and the country continued to deny him one. In protest, he used the example as discrimination to campaign for US sanctions against South Africa and the expulsion of the nation from the International Lawn Tennis Federation. In January 1970, Ashe won his second Grand Slam singles title at the Australian Open. With the competition somewhat depleted by the absence of some world-class National Tennis League (NTL) professional players, barred by their league from entering because the financial guarantees were deemed too low, Ashe defeated Dick Crayley in straight sets in the final to become the first non-Australian to win the title since 1959. In March 1970, triggered by South Africa's refusal to grant Ashe a visa to play there, the country was expelled from the Davis Cup competition for its racial policy. In September 1970, shortly after helping the US Davis Cup team defeat West Germany in the challenge round to win their third consecutive Davis Cup, Ashe signed a 5-year contract with Lamahans World Championship Tennis. In March 1971, Ashe reached the final of the Australian Open again, but lost in straight sets to Ken Rosewall. In June that year, Ashe won the French Open men's doubles with partner Marty Riessen. In September, Ashe reached the final of the US Open for the second time, after leading his opponent Ilie Nastase by 2-1, and with a break point to take a 4-1 lead in the fourth set. He eventually lost in 5 sets. The loss from such a winning position was the biggest disappointment of Ashe's professional tennis career. At the post-match awards ceremony, irritated by some of Nastase's on-court antics during the game, Ashe praised Nastase as a tough opponent and colorful player, then suggested, open quote, "And when he brushes up on some of his court manners, he is going to be even better," close quote. At this tournament, concerned that men's tennis professionals were not receiving winnings commensurate with the sport's growing popularity, and to protect players from promoters and associations, Ashe supported the founding of the Association of Tennis Professionals. He went on to become its elected president in 1974. In June 1973, as a result of an ATP boycott, Ashe was one of 13 seeded players and 81 players in total who withdrew from the Wimbledon tournament to much public criticism.
Under these amateur rules that we had come up on, players had to be in good standing with their country. And Niki Pilic elected not to play Davis Cup, and so he wasn't in good standing with the Yugoslavian Tennis Association. And we felt that he should be in the draw. And Wimbledon said, no, he's not in good standing, we're not going to let him in.
The catalyst for the boycott was that Yugoslavian ATP member Niki Pilic had been suspended for 9 months by his tennis federation after allegedly refusing to represent them in a Davis Cup tie against New Zealand in May, something Pilic denied. The ban was upheld by the ILTF, though they reduced it to just 1 month. The ATP contested the ban but lost a lawsuit to force Pilic's participation at Wimbledon during the ban period. As a member of the ATP board, Ashe voted to boycott the tournament, a vote that was only narrowly passed when ATP chairman Cliff Drysdale abstained.
This afternoon it was not so much tennis but tennis politics that seemed to matter. Obviously we'll have to wait for tonight's meeting before a final decision.
Well, there wasn't a vote taken, but there weren't any dissenting votes in the room.
What would the Wimbledon authorities have to do to make you play?
The Wimbledon authorities cannot make us play. In fact, no tournament in the world, no tennis event can make anyone play.
I was looking forward to defending my title, but we felt it was important, so all the leaders and all the top players didn't play that year.
And Stan Smith only won 1 Wimbledon. That's the type of character that like Stan and Arthur had. Something that at the time I wasn't really aware of, and nor did I respect as much as I do now.
Our fight is not with Wimbledon. Let's make that clear. It just so happens that the Wimbledon fortnight coincides with Nicky Pulich's band.
He wants to be involved in deciding things for tennis, I think. Probably if he was not a tennis player, he will be a politician, I think.
The reason for the boycott was to support Pulich as an ATP member. But the importance was that it proved the solidarity of the fledgling ATP and showed the tennis associations that professional players could no longer be dictated to. In November 1973, with the South African government seeking to end their Olympic ban and rejoin the Olympic movement, Ashe was finally granted a visa to enter the country for the first time to play in the South African Open. He lost in the final to Jimmy Connors, but won the doubles with partner Tom Oker.
It was important to Arthur for black South Africans to be able to see what can be done, because they were people who had been stripped of possibilities. He was a living example of the possibilities. There again, using tennis as a vehicle to contribute to the world.
I'd just like to say that as a foreigner, someone who takes a great deal of interest in the place, I think that repeated trips by the sportsmen, including us tennis players and other teams of the world, can go a long way toward normalizing relations between South Africa and the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Despite boycotts against South African sport, Ashe believed that his presence could help break down stereotypes and that by competing and winning the tournament, it would stand as an example of the result of integration and help bring about change in apartheid South Africa. He reached the singles final again in 1974, losing in straight sets to Connors for the second consecutive year. Later in 1977, Ashe addressed a small crowd of boycott supporters at the US Open and admitted that he had been wrong to participate in South Africa and once again supported the boycott of South African players after he had tried to purchase tickets for some young Africans for a tennis match in South Africa and was told to use an Africans-only counter. In the media, Ashe called for South Africa to be expelled from the professional tennis circuit and Davis Cup competition.
I remember in the early 70s going over to play a tournament in Johannesburg, South Africa, during the apartheid. But one of the reasons I went over was because Arthur Ashe was going over. I mean, no African American ever went over there because of apartheid. I mean, they were just rebelling against it. And it was like, you know, it's just something you didn't do.
On my left, Arthur Ashe.
One of the press conferences earlier on, Arthur had said, angrily about South Africa. He said, I wish they'd drop a hydrogen bomb on South Africa. He couldn't imagine apartheid, which was much worse than being black in America. He wanted to understand it. It's all about curiosity.
Settle down, please. Jimmy Connors won the toss and is elected to receive.
When he up and went, and then provided the explanation that, well, I wanted to see for myself. Well, that's the equivalent of sticking your head in a blast furnace after everybody had said, hey, that's some heat that you don't want. Those who thought that he should just go and play and keep his mouth shut and don't make an issue of his race or of playing in South Africa blasted him. Then there were those who blasted him for going over there in the first place from the left. So Arthur oftentimes ended up alienating, infuriating one side or the other, and in most instances, both sides.
On July 5, 1975, in the first All-American Wimbledon final since 1947, Ashe, seeded 6th and just a few days short of his 32nd birthday, won Wimbledon at his 9th attempt, defeating the overwhelming favorite and defending champion, Jimmy Connors. Ashe had never beaten Connors in any of their previous encounters, and Connors had not dropped a set in any of the 6 earlier rounds. But Ashe played an almost perfect game of tactical tennis to win in 4 sets.
Wimbledon 1975.
Title holder Jimmy Connors plays against Arthur Ashe in a very exciting final. Despite the determination and spectacular point scoring of favourite Connors, the cool head of Arthur Ashe helps him to stay on top. He becomes the first black male player to win Wimbledon and settles an old score with the ever-controversial Connors, who'd announced a $5 million libel suit against Ashe just 2 weeks before this match. Another golden moment of Wimbledon.
Ashe played for a few more years and won the Australian Open doubles with Tony Raj in January 1977, but a left foot heel injury, requiring surgery a month later, and subsequent long-term rehabilitation saw his world ranking drop to 157th, before a remarkable comeback saw him rise back to 13th in the world again the following year at the age of 35.
There were some things that I did in Davis Cup as well as individually that I'm not proud of, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I wouldn't have changed a thing. But when you get involved in something you really care about, the angst that you're feeling or pressure, or at least you put it on yourself, things happen that perhaps you wish didn't.
McEnroe wanted them to hurry up and get back into action, but Ashe ordered McEnroe to stop arguing with them and get back to his place.
Johnny Mac sort of mellowed later in life, but he was a very difficult young player. But Arthur handled him. He knew how to reach him.
I had a lot of respect for Arthur. I sort of, to some degree, blew it off, maybe in the heat of the moment. It wasn't anything personal. It was just my own looniness or insanity, and it was sort of like, look, you know what you're getting in a way.
And then he was having to deal with John McEnroe and Jimmy Connors, and it was different for him. It was a big challenge for him, and I think there were times, and I'm sure that he found it very difficult, but he got through it.
However, after undergoing heart surgery in December 1979, Ashe officially retired in April 1980 at age 36.
Yes, I mean, to be 36 and having a heart attack, especially someone who's in the shape he was in, just didn't seem to fit.
Well, I knew that his father had had 4 or 5 heart attacks before he died, so I knew he had a weak heart, but yes, it was a real shock, of course.
Yes, he was lean and mean, but the stress of life, being the first, took its toll in its own way.
His career record was 818 wins, 260 losses, and 51 titles. After his retirement, Ashe took on many roles, including writing for Time magazine and the Washington Post.
Arthur wrote a wonderful editorial in the New York Times. It was basically a message to the parents of young black athletes and said, get your kids out of the gym and into the library. I worked with him on researching that, and we figured out the number of athletes in the United States that make their living in playing sports. It was about 2,000 at the time. And then you say, how many lawyers are there? And how many doctors are there? And your statistical chance of making a living and becoming a success were much greater in the library than on the sports field. That was his sensible philosophy.
Commentating for ABC Sports, founding the National Junior Tennis League, and serving as captain of the U.S. Davis Cup team from 1981 to 1985. He was elected to the International Tennis Hall of Fame in 1985.
Hi, my name is Doug Stark, and I'm the Museum Director at the International Tennis Hall of Fame and Museum. We are standing here at the Willard Family Enshrinement Gallery, which honors all of our Hall of Famers. Behind me is an exhibit entitled Arthur Ashe, Champion and Humanitarian, which highlights the career of Arthur Ashe both on and off the court. This marked the anniversary of Arthur's induction in 1985, and we worked closely with his daughter Tamara and wife Jeannie to create this tribute exhibit. All of the items on display have been loaned by his daughter Tamara, and it marks the first time that they have been on display together. Among the highlights are his racket from the 1968 U.S. Open, Davis Cup trophies, and memorabilia from his career as a humanitarian.
In 1988, Ashe published a 3-volume book titled A Hard Road to Glory, A History of the African American Athlete, after working with a team of researchers for nearly 6 years.
A Hard Road to Glory, the Black Athlete in America, is based on research conducted by tennis great Arthur Ashe.
Black athletes enjoy more fame, wealth, and attention today than they ever have before in the history of the world. In America, the best of them have achieved a kind of glory that in the past has been reserved for war heroes and saints. This kind of adulation has brought good and bad, but it wasn't long ago in 20th century America that a black man who defeated a white in a fair contest could honestly fear for his life. That was much the way it was in 1908, when one man changed the course of history. All of the athletes pictured here changed America. They affected their society far more than many who labored in more serious occupations than the playing of games. They not only traveled the hard road to glory, they built it.
Ashe stated that the book was more important than any tennis titles. Ashe was also an active civil rights supporter. He was a member of a delegation of 31 prominent African Americans who visited South Africa to observe political change in the country as it approached racial integration. He was arrested on January 11, 1985 for protesting outside the Embassy of South Africa, Washington, D.C. during an anti-apartheid rally. He was arrested again on September 9, 1992 outside the White House for protesting on the recent crackdown on Haitian refugees.
He said, okay, this is my situation. I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to try to, get through it, do whatever I can. His last day, he was out there, he was arrested one time supporting civil rights movement, marching in Washington, D.C.
On February 20, 1977, Ashe married Jean Motosami, a photographer and graphic artist he met in October 1976 at a United Negro College Fund benefit.
Talented, articulate, charming, successful, wealthy, and single until yesterday. Yesterday, Arthur Ashe lost his bachelorhood. The 33-year-old Ashe married 25-year-old Jean Marie Motosami, a graphic artist at NBC and a freelance photographer.
Andrew Young, the United States ambassador to the United Nations, performed the wedding ceremony in the United Nations Chapel, New York City. During the ceremony, Ashe wore a cast on his left foot, having had an operation on an injured heel 10 days earlier.
What's the best advice you've gotten?
Advice we've gotten? Not to do this again.
I feel pretty good. Ambassador Young also told me that my job is going to be a lot tougher than his. So.
He always said he'd never marry a feminist. He'd always marry this very docile woman. And then when I met her and she started saying Ash, she'd call him Ash, like I need to talk to. She was so sweet. I started laughing at Arthur. Is this what you thought you were marrying? He goes, no, it isn't. So they matched up really well, both very intelligent.
In December 1986, Ashe and Motosami adopted a daughter. She was named Kamara after her mother's profession. In July 1979, Ashe suffered a heart attack while holding a tennis clinic in New York. In view of his high level of fitness as an athlete, his condition drew attention to the hereditary aspect of heart disease. Ashe's mother already had cardiovascular disease at the time of her death, and his father had suffered a first heart attack and a second just a week before Ashe's own attack. Cardiac catheterization revealed one of Ashe's arteries was completely closed, another was 95% closed, and a third was closed 50% in 2 places. Ashe underwent a quadruple bypass operation on December 13, 1979. A few months after the operation, Ashe was on the verge of making his return to professional tennis. However, during a family trip to Cairo, Egypt, he developed chest pains while running. Ashe stopped running and returned to see a physician accompanied by his close friend Douglas Stein. Stein urged Ashe to return to New York City so he could be close to his cardiologist, his surgeon, and top-class medical facilities. In 1983, Ashe underwent a second round of heart surgery to correct the previous bypass surgery. After the surgery, Ashe became national campaign chairman for the American Heart Association.
He was still rocking. He was still going for it. Come on, give the guy a break. Now Arthur just worked up to this last moment that he possibly physically could.
His friends would say, look, Arthur, don't do this. It's not good for your health. I mean, he was taking 20 or 30 pills a day, still fighting, and still with the hope that he would be able to get through this. And you never heard him say, why me?
In September 1988, Ashe was hospitalized after experiencing paralysis in his right arm. After undergoing exploratory brain surgery and a number of tests, doctors discovered that Ashe had toxoplasmosis, a parasitic disease that is commonly found in people infected with HIV. A subsequent test later revealed that Ashe was HIV positive. Ashe and his doctors believed he contracted the virus from blood transfusions he received during his second heart surgery. He and his wife decided to keep his illness private for the sake of their daughter, who was then 2 years old.
He fainted a couple times, and we thought he had a brain tumor. We sent him into New York Hospital. They did all these tests. I said, God, it's great. You don't have a brain tumor. It's fantastic. I was all excited, And Jeannie said, well, but Arthur has something he wants to tell you. And the doctor was there, and me and my wife, and just 4 of us. And Arthur said, yes, the doctors tell me, Donald, that I have AIDS. That's what they say, but I don't believe it. I don't have AIDS. He got AIDS in the second operation in the Harlem hospital from tainted blood. But he didn't have HIV positive. He had full-blown AIDS in the 4th stage when they found it.
There was a very quiet conspiracy among people who knew Arthur that there was a possibility. And because of the respect for Arthur and the respect for his privacy, because they knew he was a very private person, nobody said anything.
The HBO family, I call us, even though we worked at television, but I considered us a family. We knew for 4 years that he had HIV, and he never knew we knew until that moment when he was outed. And I told him, I said, Arthur, do you realize that we've known at HBO for 4 years that you have AIDS? He said, no way. I said, way? I said, yes, we've known, but we knew your privacy was so important to you. It was terrible not being able to talk to him about it for 4 years and knowing he was struggling.
In 1992, a friend of Ashe who worked for USA Today heard that he was ill and called Ashe to confirm the story.
He was covering for HBO during this time, so I used to see him all the time at Wimbledon particularly. And I always felt that it seemed to have something that he might want to tell me, but he didn't. And so we didn't talk about it. And shortly afterwards, that's when I got the call from someone and indicated that this was the case. Now, journalists, you get calls from everybody and you might get crank calls and etc. This was not a crank call. This was someone I knew, and I knew it was important, and I did make the decision that this is something that I have to follow.
Arthur himself said he understood why, as journalists, once we had this account, that we felt obligated to check it. And actually, I don't know that I could ever say he was pleased that we came to him, but I think he understood and appreciated that the first place we went was to him.
And then he said, why did you come here? It was the first time that I'd seen him as angry as he was. He was really angry with me. And I said, Arthur, because it's my job, and I didn't want anyone else doing my job.
Ashe decided to preempt USA Today's plans to publish the story about his illness, and on April 8, 1992, publicly announced he had contracted HIV. Ashe blamed USA Today for forcing him to go public with the news, but also stated that he was relieved that he no longer had to lie about his illness. After the announcement, hundreds of readers wrote letters to USA Today criticizing their choice to run the story about Ashe's illness, which subsequently forced Ashe to publicize his illness.
Arthur gave me a telephone call and said, tomorrow I'm going to have to tell the world I have AIDS. It's a day I dreaded, and of course it's a day he dreaded, not necessarily because of him, but because of Jeannie and Camera.
I have known since the time of my brain operation in September 1988 that I have AIDS. It was transmitted through a blood transfusion after one of my open heart bypass operations. In all likelihood, the second operation in 1983.
What he felt was that as a result of this, people would treat him like a leper, that they wouldn't want to touch him, that they wouldn't want to be around him, and he was concerned about how they would also react to his wife and his kid.
Just as I am sure everyone in this room has some personal matter that he or she would like to keep private, so did we. There was certainly no compelling medical or physical necessity to go public with my medical condition.
You know, he was not in a good place. I talked to him 5 minutes before that conference. I was on the phone with him 5 minutes before you see him speaking. He said, I've really been ratted out, and I really am upset. And I said, I'm so sorry, that you're not able to do it in your own terms.
After Ashe went public with his illness, he founded the Arthur Ashe Foundation for the Defeat of AIDS, working to raise awareness about the virus and advocated teaching sex education and safe sex. He also fielded questions about his own diagnosis and attempted to clear up the misconception that only homosexuals or IV drug users were at risk of contracting AIDS.
Almost 3 or 4 months after he made the announcement, he formed the Arthur Ashe Foundation for the Defeat of AIDS, and during that time he raised $5 to $10 million. People were contributing all over. And the most important thing, I think, is that he helped people with AIDS to deal with the rejection, to let them know that he has it too, and you don't have to go into a shell. He was pretty active in doing that.
I asked Arthur, what's the most difficult thing for you? He said, Billy, because I didn't know if it was the AIDS or if it was or being of color. I didn't know. And he said, the toughest thing for me is being a black man. Because every time I step out of the apartment, because he lived in New York, I know that maybe the taxi's going to pass me up when I need a ride because of my color. He said every day he feels discrimination because of his color. And he said, I feel that has been my most difficult journey, even more difficult than the HIV/AIDS journey.
It suddenly just hit me like a ton of bricks how much tougher it was for him than it was for me. And I remember when it came out that he had AIDS, I'm like, God, did he get a short end of the stick, man.
In September 1992, Ashe suffered a mild heart attack. In a speech to the United Nations General Assembly on World AIDS Day, December 1, 1992, he addressed the growing needs for AIDS awareness and increased research funding, saying, open quote, "We want to be able to look back and say to all concerned that we did what we had to do when we had to do it, and with all the resources required," close quote. 2 months before his death, he founded the Arthur Ashe Institute for Urban Health to help address issues of inadequate healthcare delivery, and was named Sports Illustrated Magazine Sportsman of the Year. He also spent much of the last years of his life writing his memoir Days of Grace, finishing the manuscript less than a week before his death. On February 6, 1993, Ashe died from AIDS-related pneumonia at New York Hospital at age 49.
I'm going to read an item off of the Associated Press wire. At 3:15 today, Arthur Ashe died of pneumonia and other complications from his battle with AIDS. And I'm very sorry for Arthur and his family.
His funeral was held at the Arthur Ashe Athletic Center in Richmond, Virginia, on February 10. Then Governor Douglas Wilder, who was a friend of Ashe, allowed his body to be laid in state at the governor's mansion in Richmond.
At the state capitol tonight, where Ashe's body lay in state, hundreds still stood in line, walking quietly, respectfully towards the governor's mansion, and a last glimpse of a man who meant so much to so many.
He was on the magnitude of a king, of a Thurgood Marshall, a great role model for the young people around the world.
Out of respect for Arthur Ashe, I think the city should close down and business should stop tomorrow so that we can all mourn this great man.
He is a fine man. We all love him.
He means to me a person who's inspired me to do better in life because he's done so much and have overcome a lot of barriers.
Celebrities became commonplace earlier in the day. Dick Shapp, Bruce Morton, Bud Collins, Andrew Young, Bryant Gumbel. Hotels were filled to capacity.
Cars everywhere. I never seen so many people try to get in to get back out again.
And while downtown Richmond was alive with activity, the center on Boulevard that bears his name was quiet and locked tight. Tomorrow, the first 6,000 who come here will be able to take part in the ceremony in his honor.
More than 5,000 people lined up to walk past the casket. Andrew Young, who had performed the service for Ashe's wedding in 1977, officiated at his funeral. Over 6,000 mourners attended. Ashe requested that he be buried alongside his mother Marty, who died in 1950, in Woodland Cemetery in Richmond, Virginia. On February 12, 1993, a memorial service for Ashe was held at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in Manhattan. On the legacies of Arthur Ashe, in 1979, Arthur Ashe was inducted into the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. In commenting on his induction, the hall noted that, open quote, Arthur Ashe was certainly a hero to people of all ages and races, and his legacy continues to touch the lives of many today. For Arthur Ashe, tennis was a means to an end. Although he had a lucrative tennis career, it was always more than personal glory and individual accolades. He used his status as an elite tennis player to speak out against the moral inequalities that existed both in and out of the tennis world. Ashe sincerely wanted to bring about change in the world. What made him stand out was that he became a world champion along the way. Close quote.
It was very much an evident piece of our life, seeing colored-only signs for water fountains, for restrooms. Of course, the schools were segregated. We had our own playgrounds. But in a sense, because we had our own playgrounds, we have an Arthur Ashe.
There was a ruthlessness about that period as well. I mean, there were lynchings, there were beatings, there were killings, there were shootings. All these things happened. And families, parents try to be very protective of the kids, so they instilled in them the notion not to fight back, to be passive, to take it. In fact, that's one of the things that helped Arthur and those who followed him to succeed.
In 1982, the Arthur Ashe Athletic Center, a 6,000-seat multi-purpose arena, was built in Richmond, Virginia, and it hosts local sporting events and concerts. He was inducted into the Intercollegiate Tennis Association Hall of Fame in 1983. In 1985, Ashe was inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame. In 1986, Ashe won a Sports Emmy for co-writing the documentary A Hard Road to Glory, co-written with Brian Polivka. On December 3, 1992, Ashe was presented with the Sports Legend Award by the American Sportscasters Association at their 8th Annual Hall of Fame Awards dinner in New York City. On June 20, 1993, Ashe was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Bill Clinton. In 1993, Ashe received the award for Greatest Public Service Benefiting the Disadvantaged, an award given out annually by Jefferson Awards. In 1993, Dream Theater dedicated their song, Surrounded, off of Images and Words, to the memory and legacy of Ashe after he had died from AIDS.
Sometimes all I want to do is wait. The shadow I've been hiding in is fled from me today.
In 1996, the city of Richmond posthumously honored Ashe's life with a statue on Monument Avenue, a place traditionally reserved for statues of key figures of the Confederacy. The decision led to some controversy in a city that was the capital of the Confederate States during the American Civil War.
What I do know of Arthur Ashe, he was, of course, a great tennis player, great humanitarian, and I remember the unveiling of the statue here on Monument Avenue. It was a wonderful day, great day. There was some protesting against the placement of the statue because I don't know if you're very familiar with this street here, but it's mainly Civil War heroes, and hence the name Monument Avenue. So I thought it was a wonderful tribute. Arthur Ashe, great guy, loved him.
The main stadium at the USTA National Tennis Center in Flushing Meadows Park, where the US Open is played, is named Arthur Ashe Stadium in his honor. This is also the home of the annual Arthur Ashe Kids Day. In 2002, Ashe winning Wimbledon in 1975 was voted 95th in Channel 4's 100 Greatest Sporting Moments. In 2002, scholar Molefi Kete Asante listed Arthur Ashe on his list of 100 greatest African Americans. In 2005, the United States Postal Service announced the release of an Arthur Ashe commemorative postal stamp, the first stamp ever to feature the cover of a Sports Illustrated magazine. Also in 2005, Tennis Magazine put him in 30th place in their list of the 40 greatest players of the tennis era. ESPN's annual sports awards, the ESPY Awards, hands out the Arthur Ashe for Courage Award to a member of the sports world who best exhibits courage in the face of adversity.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the recipients of the Arthur Ashe Award for Courage, the Thomas family. Jan, Aaron,
on behalf of our entire family, my brother Todd, his wife Candace, my mother, myself, my wife Ellie, we are extremely humbled and honored to be awarded the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. When you look at former winners in the company we've joined, from Coach Valvano to the Tillman brothers to Nelson Mandela, and to think that our dad and the example he set of doing what's right has now led us into this category. We went through many tough times, but we had a great example from my father on how to handle adversity. He led our town through the rebuilding of the tornado, and just as he said on the screen, you got to dust yourself off, get up. Everything he did based off his faith, and that's what he led us by. My dad was known as a football coach, as the NFL Football Coach of the Year. But that's not who he was. Anybody who really knew him he's led by his faith, and then his family, and finally his football. Without that, there's no way we could have got through the past 2 years. I view this as kind of the total opposite. I never once imagined we'd bury my dad from being murdered. I never once imagined we'd be at the ESPYs receiving an award from Brett Favre. But the example he set and the challenge I believe for all of us, I know as a family, our hope and what we're looking to do is carry forward the legacy my dad left, the example that he set. When I look at all the celebrities and stars and people we see, the impact that you can have on young people, the impact you can have on our world just by doing what's right, to me is unbelievable. When you look at a man from a town of 2,000 people, the example he set, the standard he set, of how to live your life strictly by doing what's right. That's the legacy we hope to continue of our father. To carry forward what we were taught, lead by example, carry his faith. And through this, we'll continue to get through. We've got up, dust ourselves off, and we'll continue to push forward just like my dad would have wanted. On behalf of ESPN, we thank everyone. Thank you.
As a tennis player, Arthur Ashe was one of the most prominent players of his time, an all-out competitor who rarely beat himself. His legacy, however, will be the positive changes he helped bring about and the causes he championed, both within tennis and in society as a whole. Always at his best, he was for many the very definition of tennis. Yet, tennis never defined Arthur Ashe. By the mid-1970s, people began to whisper that perhaps Arthur was spending too much time on his causes and not enough time on his game.
He probably, he didn't put 100% into his tennis, and he probably could have won a lot more titles, very much like a Billie Jean King could have, but I put them in the same category because you know, Arthur had just so much going on in his mind. He wanted to help the world. It wasn't only about perfecting his slice backhand.
That's fair. We had parallel careers. There's no question. Of all the players that played in our era, he and I were the people that had a cause, not just on the court, but off the court.
It was from this realization that Arthur began to refocus on his game, determined to reach the level of play he once enjoyed. In 1975, at the age of 31, Arthur Ashe enjoyed one of his finest seasons ever and one of the shining moments of his career by winning Wimbledon. He also attained the ultimate ranking of #1 in the world. For Arthur Ashe, tennis was a means to an end. What began on the public recreation courts in Richmond, Virginia, ultimately became a lucrative, illustrious 10-year career. In between were many honors and awards, including 3 Grand Slam singles titles and over 800 career victories. But for Arthur, it was always more than personal glory and individual accolades. Rather, it was the knowledge that his status as an elite tennis player afforded him a unique and worldwide platform to speak out about inequalities, both in the tennis world and society as a whole. That, in and of itself, was unique, but not outstanding. Arthur stood out when he chose to utilize his status to bring about change, and that is what makes his legacy so unique and important. This week's edition of People in History salutes a man who remains the only black man to win the singles title at Wimbledon, the US Open and Australian Open, one of the only 2 men of black African ancestry to win any Grand Slam singles title. His name, Arthur Ashe.
I think all of the players have a lot of respect for what he did away from the court, what he did for, you know, for tennis as well. It's something that, you know, a lot of the players will try to emulate. Whether they get anywhere near to what he's done is a different story, but they can try.
Arthur would view it as the pinnacle of respect for the way he lived his life, that somebody could use his life as an example. How many of us can we say that we've been exposed to that we can use their life as an example to teach somebody else? There ain't many, okay? There ain't many. Without him realizing it, deep down, that's what Arthur Ashe's life was about.
This week's edition of People in History was scripted and sourced by Jane Owa and produced by Joseph Manasseh. Among useful sites include biography.com, facts.ng.com, amongst others. My name is Xavier Robert.
Arthur Ashe wrote his own epitaph as to how he would like for us to remember him.
I guess I tried to be a holistic athlete in the sense of not just stopping with what happened on the field or on the court. Ultimately, I guess I did not want to be known or remembered for just having hit tennis balls. And I don't think that will be the case.
He did so much more than hit tennis balls.